Hello, my name is Josh Bennett. Welcome to the Bootstrap Cabinet Shop. What I'd like to discuss with you today is how you can start your very own cabinet shop. I know there's a lot of videos like this out on YouTube, how to start woodworking businesses and things of that nature. But what we are going to talk about specifically is cabinetry. How can you start your own cabinet shop? Why am I choosing this venue? Well, cabinetry is kind of what I like to do. Woodworking is all well and good. And I like to make a cutting board here and there and a few other little things. But really what I find myself going back to is building cabinetry and cabinetry-based furniture items, chests of drawers, even bed stands, things like that, bedroom suites, kind of those things. A lot of plywood, a lot of face frames. So that's kind of what we're going to be discussing. How can you start your very own cabinet shop? And you can do this to either, fund your own hobby if you're into the woodworking and cabinetry scene. You can use this for part-time income. You can also use this to escape the 9-to-5. That's what I'm doing, And all of these reasons are great reasons, and many people go into this, just because it's relaxing and it's a fun thing to do. And some people discover that they want to take it a little bit farther than that. They say, hey, wouldn't it be great if maybe I could stay home and do this? So a little bit about me. I had my own cabinet shop and sort of still do. I mean, we're standing in it right now. It's not very big, for about 3 years. So I did cabinetry for 3 years on my own. I actually started in 2019, right about the time COVID hit, which is a bad time to start. I didn't make a whole lot of money doing it. I learned a whole bunch. But honestly, kind of at the end of the day, after 3 years, I made very little money doing it, and I was doing it full time, and I spent a lot of time working on things that I didn't need to work on and trying to figure out stuff and stressing over details that need to be stressed about. And so here I am today making another go of it, and I want to share that with you. I want to sort of bring you along, help you to understand the things that you don't need to do, help you understand, hey, this is some stuff that you do need to do. And I'm going to be pretty opinionated about some of this stuff. And the reason for that being is because I'm trying to get to a very specific end goal. This isn't a sort of, hey, you just figure out what works for you. No, I'm trying to tell you something that you can do. I'm giving you a roadmap. I feel like there's a lot of videos out there and people say, well, you can try this and you can try that. And that's all good. Ideas are good. But I want to help you specifically. I want to come to you with specific material. And so that means that you're going to be able to know, hey, I'm going to start a cabinet shop. So yes, cabinetry, specific focus. We're going to do this. We're going to do X, Y, Z. We're going to take this road. We're going to buy these tools. And so I'm kind of giving you a roadmap, almost as if you were to buy a franchise, they will tell you, hey, this is exactly how you do the job that you do of the franchise. If you have a McDonald's franchise or a Subway franchise, they have specific training materials. They have specific methods that they use for making the sandwiches, and you need this equipment, and this how the lighting is going to be. And so it's very specific. So we're kind of going to get into that sort of a vein with this. So I am going to be discovering new methods, implementing a lot of ideas that I developed over that 3 years of building cabinets, and try to bring you guys along and hopefully, get a little input from you viewers, but also provide a lot of insight into a lot of the things that I feel like you just don't see in YouTube. There's a lot of guys out there who do have some really good advice on starting businesses and who have a lot of specific things that they talk about. Like, hey, you can sell this item and this item. And that's kind of where I want to go. I want to help give you specific things to do. What we are not doing is talking about woodworking. Okay. You're thinking, well, Josh, cabinetry is woodworking. Well, of course it's woodworking, but we're specifically zeroed in, like I said before, on cabinets. I'm not going to be going over all wood construction casework. We're not building chests of drawers that don't have slides. No, we're going to be using metal slides here, right? We're going to be using undermount, Celiche or Blum slides. We're going to be using pocket doors. We're going to be using all the modern technology for things. This is not hand tooling. Well, it's not saying there's no place for hand tools, but that's not really the vein we're going into. This isn't custom furniture pieces. We're not doing any kind of carving or turning or anything like that. If you have a project that requires things like turned legs or carvings, there are wonderful companies out there who provide that for you, and they have nice shops and nice machine work that is set up specifically to do that. and they can do it way more efficiently and effectively than I can. I'm not saying that if you already have those things that you can't do it. By all means, do it. So, and we're also not going to be talking about YouTube. I mean, obviously you're watching this on YouTube, but I'm not here to give you advice on how to do YouTube because I don't have a clue on how to do YouTube. This is video number 1. This is more of a documentation sort of series to help kind of bring people along and hopefully get the word out there and allow us to collaborate together. For those of you who may have been out there looking around in the cabinetry world, there's an old forum called WoodWeb, where you get a lot of professionals in the industry who come together and share, hey, this is how I do stuff in my shop. Resources like that are very rare because people who have experience are generally, running their own shop. So hopefully what I want to do is kind of give you guys that inside look into what that is like. We're kind of stepping away from the, hey, we're doing woodworking as a YouTube thing, and I'm using YouTube as a documentation medium so that you can kind of see, hey, this is how I can actually get something started and do it myself and make some extra money, fund the hobby, or even go full-time with it. So what I want to talk about right now are misconceptions and pitfalls of getting started. I kind of want to get into the meat of this for you. This video is probably going to be a little bit long, and I don't want it to just be me rambling, but give you something that you can kind of bite into and get started with. So misconceptions and pitfalls, one of the biggest things that we see, and we'll kind of explain this a little bit, is delayed start. People think to themselves, hey, man, I'd really like to do this, and maybe you've already got some equipment, maybe you're thinking about doing it, but you're delaying yourself, or you're saying, well, my saw's not that good, or I don't have this, or I don't have that, or if I'm going to build cabinetry, I've got to have stuff to build doors. Little spoiler alert, I'm going to avoid building doors like the plague. I'm going to try to buy all my doors pre-made. And there's a couple people around here who will do that for me. Other shops who will do that. There's also some big shops who are commercial door suppliers that you can order from, and they'll ship you the doors. We'll get into that later, right? So you don't really need a lot of this fancy equipment. You don't need a lot of this special stuff. But we'll talk about more specifics on equipment and why you don't need them later. One of the other things is that people think that cabinetry is super precise, right? So that's another reason why you may think you need to have really nice equipment, is because cabinetry is such precise work. That is not the case. I'm here to kind of pull the wool off of your eyes. When it comes to the professional cabinet industry, there are so many shops who do really great work and really wonderful work, and they have cheap saws. They've got a lot of cheap equipment. You'd be surprised at how little specialty equipment that a lot of these shops have. And there's a reason for that, right? Because when you start branching out and you buy a lot of equipment, things get expensive real quick. So we're going to limit ourselves. The goal of this is we are bootstrapping. We're going to narrow our focus, and that's going to make it so that we don't have to go out and we have to buy this piece of equipment, this piece of equipment, this piece of equipment. And we'll get into that more, as I said, later on. And another thing I kind of want to hit on with misconceptions is materials, right? I feel like in the world of YouTube, there's a lot of hate for different kinds of materials. And one of them is right here. This is the famous, or should I say infamous, Columbia Purebond plywood. Now, this gets a lot of hate from the armchair cabinet maker and woodworking group. And I kind of understand why. This stuff is sold by Home Depot, and so people will go there, and the box stores aren't always great at keeping their plywood and materials flat, so you pull this thing off the stack and it looks like a Pringles chip. It's frustrating, right? But honestly, this stuff probably makes up the backbone of the cabinet industry in, well, I'm just going to say the eastern half of the United States, because once you get out west, stuff gets a little bit different because they have different materials out there. So where I am at is southeast Ohio. So we are in poplar and birch country where I am at. This plywood right here, this Columbia Purebond, is probably the best-selling plywood out here. And you're going to find out too, is when you're getting into this, I don't live in a densely populated area. I kind of live out in the sticks, right? Like I said, southeastern Ohio, foothills of the Appalachians. This material is sold by my plywood supplier. This stuff is actually decent. It's got poplar cores. This has a CD face on it. which means that there is a C veneer, which is your good face, and then there's a D veneer, which is your bad face. Now, this is the what we would call the back side of the panel right here. You can see we have some fills here and some knots. And honestly, when you're building cabinets, if this is going to be likely on the back side of the cabinet, this back face is not meant to be seen by anyone. It's going to go on the side of the cabinet where you have the finished interior, and then a side. And on that side of that cabinet, you're going to put a finished end on that. You're going to put either a door panel that's decorative, or you're just going to put a flat panel that has a nice, attractive looking veneer, or something else that's flat, and maybe it's not really good looking, but it's going to be a flat primed and painted piece on the side. So for all the hate that this gets, this is probably the #1 selling product as far as cabinet casework is concerned. Item number 2, we have the Indonesian birch plywood. Now this stuff is probably just about half the price, actually. Purebond plywood, as of June 24, that's a little bit late. I'm sure the prices could have changed some, but in June of 2024, this is about $50 a sheet from my hardwood distributor. This Indonesian birch plywood here, this stuff is about $26.75 a sheet. Major price difference. So what are you getting? I mean, as you can see, this has a decent looking veneer on the face, and actually this particular piece is pre-finished. So this is actually what would be considered the good face. But really, I'm probably not going to be working with too much pre-finished. There are times when we may need this, but for what we are doing in here, pre-finished might just be relegated to things like shelving. And honestly, I may not use it at all. This is the learning process, right? I'm bringing you guys along. I may or may not use a pre-finished product. I kind of haven't figured that out yet. I have used this a lot in the past, but when we get into doing things like finishing the cabinets, this poses some different challenges. So this Indonesian plywood has got paper thin face veneers. I mean, you're not going to be able to see this on the camera because my camera is not that good, but this has what looks like copy paper thickness veneers. The Purebond, on the other hand, this has veneers that are probably about 1/32 of an inch, so it's more like heavy cardstock. So you don't have to worry about sanding through this veneer. You got a lot of grace when you're sanding this. And you would think to yourself, well, let's say we're doing painted cabinets. Does it matter if I sand through the veneer? Yes, it does, because these plies underneath are rough. They have gaps and little voids and cracks in them, and they are internal core plies for a reason, because they do not look nice. So if you sand through the veneer, you will see it, especially in a stain application. If you are buying an import plywood, or maybe a lower cost plywood that has maybe an oak or a maple veneer that you want to stain, you need to be careful, because thin veneers can be burned through quickly, and then it will show terribly in a stain application. So then the third item that we have as far as material is concerned, and you're not going to see this one as much, it's going to be this Radiata pine. There are shops around here who use this to decent success. I personally don't care for it as much, mostly because this has got a pine core veneers, right? So the core veneers are not a hardwood. These other two pieces that I showed you, the Indonesian and the Purebond plywood, have hardwood veneers. The Indonesian birch plywood has birch veneers, and they're not nice veneers. There's several voids and things like that, but it gets the job done just fine. And then the Columbia Purebond has a poplar hardwood internal core veneers to it. So this Radiata pine has it almost looks like a Baltic birch. They're very thin veneers, but they're pine. And there's nothing really wrong with that. Use the material for the application it's intended for. So this material has a tendency to really drink up glue. Just kind of like with end grain on a piece of solid wood, these plies, being a softer material, lighter weight, it likes a lot more glue. So you kind of, those little details sort of mess with you. A lot of times people may think, oh, that's not a big deal, but when you are running a cabinet shop, when we're bootstrapping, right? I've said that 10 times already. We're really looking to be really lean, mean cabinet making machines. So little things that just kind of frustrate you when you're working with material, you're like, oh, it just becomes little hassles. You're going to be dealing with those little hassles 10 and 20 times over. So sometimes that can be a deal breaker for you, and it just depends, right? And that's where we're going to get into. We're going to get into a lot of processes, and specifically, how are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And we are taking on this challenge to eliminate this pitfall. And there's this, it's a game. It's really a puzzle in a game. So So also too, the veneer you can see on this is not really that nice looking. It's not terrible looking, but it's not really that pretty. I really prefer birch. It looks a lot better. And honestly, if I could afford to do maple as the interiors for all my cabinets, I would use maple because I think maple just looks amazing when it's clear coated. But this material also, being that it is pine and is soft, doesn't have a lot of great screw holding capability. So the screws on this, while it will hold, I have had many screws strip out in this material, and so I'm not really that big on it. When I need to put a screw into something to tighten something up, I don't want it to strip out really easily. And these, to get a good bite, I feel like I need to run 2-inch screws into it just so that I have enough screw thread in there to get a bite on it. But, we may use this in the future for different things, right? This is a decent material. You should know about it. Now, my hardwood supplier does not sell this. I should say my local hardwood supplier does not sell this. There is a guy not too far from me where I can purchase this from, and he has a small cabinet shop and he sells materials and things like that. So I'm able to get this through him if I want it. But honestly, after using it, playing around with it, I'm not really big on it. But you never know. You may find out that this is a good material for you and you can get it at a good price, or that it's readily available. That's another challenge, making sure your materials are readily available. And so this may work out well for you. Okay, well, that pretty much concludes all I've got to tell you for right now. So we hope you enjoy this, and please join us again at the Bootstrap Cabinet Shop.